Welcome to session number 32 of an introduction to biblical prophecy. I'm Dr. John McMath, retired from the Moody Bible Institute, and I'm joined here by my friends in Italy and in the Philippines, around the United States, and ships at sea. We're having a good time. We've been doing this ever since the COVID panic started, and you're welcome if you're joining us by way of Facebook or YouTube. We're in a variety of places. Today, we'll be looking at uh, chapters 14 and 15, I hope, or portions of 14 and 15 in the book of Revelation. This is an interlude between the seven personages that we've talked about before uh, and the seven bowl judgments. The seven personages are characters who lay out the conflict between God and Satan, between the forces for good and the forces for evil throughout all of history. And we've got a variety of those, and we went through those over the last 2 weeks. The interlude here, beginning in chapter 14, takes us back into the second half of the tribulation period, with an introduction to uh, the preaching of the eternal gospel, which is very interesting. Lots of questions. We have more questions than answers, but we can get a general idea of what's going on. I'm going to start with a bit of a running start with the Lamb and the 144,000 on Mount Zion. We're just going to take a look at those before we jump into this interlude. Is the Lamb and the 144,000 are intimately involved in what's going to be happening in this next period. So let me share the screen. See if we can make this happen. Yes. Okay. So Lamb and the 144,000 are interesting. They're Jewish. There are 144,000 who have his name and the name of his father written on their foreheads. So this is these are Christians. Well, they are believers. I'm not sure we can call them Christian, but they're believers. They're godly men who have come to Christ probably during this tribulation period, because they didn't go up in the rapture. This is certainly not the church. This is um, Jews chosen, marked. They're doing this thing. This is a very, very Jewish image. So we've got the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, which is the Temple Mount, and 144,000, and the voice from heaven with harpists singing a new song. And these are the ones who will begin preaching this eternal gospel to the ends of the earth. So this is an interesting group. They fit into this next bit, which is where we're going to be. And I'm sorry I don't have a background image, but I couldn't think of anything that really worked for this. The second, or this part, this interlude begins with an angel flying in mid-heaven with an eternal gospel to preach to those who live on the earth. Now, it's interesting that the angel is doing the preaching. We're going to see the 144,000 doing that same work. But he has an eternal gospel to preach to those who live on the earth and to every nation and tribe and tongue and people. Now that's uh, we missionaries like verses like that, uh, because the point of the exercise is to see a gospel preaching church in every people group on the planet. That's that's the dream. That's why we put missionaries in airplanes. That's why we put missionaries on the internet. Um, that's why we train pastors in every place that we can get into. And yet today there are many places left that we can't go. It's just it's either illegal, too expensive, too difficult, or for whatever reason. There are places that we really can't go with the gospel. The easy places uh, are, like I say, easy. And missionaries have gone for years, and local churches have been planted. And uh, the goal, of course, is for the missionaries to stop and for the local church to do the work. That's the whole point. During the tribulation period, it's going to be a different set of circumstances entirely. And this angel in midair with the eternal gospel. What is the eternal gospel? It comes down to what he says in verse 7. He said with a loud voice, "Fear God, give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come." Okay, now that's got nothing to do, or doesn't seem to have much to do, with the life, death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. When we preach the Christian gospel, uh, we're we're going to people with a message uh, about the solution for their sin problem, provided by God, who sent His Son to die for sin, and to be resurrected for their justification. If they'll only believe, then they'll have eternal life, and that's a true gospel. That's our message, and we need to proclaim that to everyone who will listen. This gospel of chapter 14 has a slightly different focus, because now we're not in a place where there is time to plant the church. Uh, it, it can't be this gradual reproductive method where we're one at a time bringing people into the kingdom. The the tribulation period will be a time of emergency, a time of great catastrophe where everything is coming apart, and there's obviously no hope for anyone anywhere. And at this point, the message becomes urgent and very simple. Fear God. Uh, the Proverbs tell us that the beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. The fear of God is more than reverence. Sometimes we speak of the fear of God as reverential awe. It's much more than that. Uh, it's a sense of the immense power of God, a sense of the uncontrollable, even unpredictable power of God. He can do whatever he wants. And he is perfectly capable of saving us by his power. He is also perfectly capable of casting us down into judgment. So the beginning of wisdom, which is a practical way of dealing with the life as it really is the fear of God. And without that, uh, nothing else really happens. So fear God and give him glory. It's a whole other thing. The church was imbued with the Holy Spirit and given the indwelling Christ in order that we might have a hope of glory. The point of the church over a 2,000-year period has been to make Christ visible in the world, and thus to be an attraction for non-believers. During this time, the the point of the believers who come during this time of trouble uh, is to again make God and Christ visible in the world. They're to stand out from the rest of the crowd. And at this time, that's going to be a very dangerous thing to do. So the call is fear God more than you fear the rest of the crowd. Stand out from the crowd by being the image of God here in this terrible time. So it's somewhat of a terrifying gospel. Fear God, give him glory because the hour of his judgment has come. This passage doesn't say the day of judgment has come, but rather the hour itself. Um, Jesus told his disciples in the Olivet Discourse that no one knows the day or the hour of my appearing. Well, now the angel is revealing this is it. The day has arrived. We're at the hour of the final judgment. So it has arrived. And in this hour of judgment, do what? Worship. Worship him who made the heavens and the earth and the sea and the springs of water. It comes back here at the end of the book of Revelation. It comes back to the reality of the creation. The heavens and the earth and everything in them, including all of us, were made by one God. We were created for God's purposes. And to the extent that we fall short of the purposes of God, primarily the purpose to glorify God, to make God visible in our character, in our actions, in our words, to that extent, we have fallen from the position that God created us to dwell in. And to that extent, we deserve hell. So that's what's coming up here. Here comes the judgment. You need to worship. And I've emphasized the concept of worship before, and we'll talk about this just a bit more, because worship is such an important idea in the Bible. Worship is not merely the music at the beginning of our church services. Now, I like music as much as anybody else. I like to sing. I've got a terrible voice, but I like to sing. I understand music a little bit, and I enjoy it. So I'm not against the music, but music isn't worship. It can be a call to worship. Worship involves this biblical concept um, of a wholehearted, enthusiastic submission of all that I am to a God who is worthy of infinitely more. I cannot give God all that he deserves, but I can give it my best shot. That's the notion of worship. Fear God, give him glory, make him visible, because we're in the time of judgment, and this is the time to worship. And it's going to be a time of terrible suffering during which believers who come to Christ during this time are going to need to worship. Wholehearted submission, not submission because they are forced to, but submission because they realize that God is the King, and this is the right thing to do. So that's the concept, and the basic message of the gospel is this is it. The judgment has come, and if you're going to survive this, you're going to have to fear God and worship him, give him glory. Now, it's a little different from the gospel that we preach today. It's almost what some folks call the turn or burn uh, gospel message, and it's a fearful one. And then a second angel comes out. This is in verse 8. And this begins shouting, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who has made all the nations drink of the wine of the passion of her immorality." All right. Now, this is a very difficult issue, frankly. I, one of my basic principles is that when the Bible uses a name for a thing, like Jerusalem, I think Jerusalem always means Jerusalem. I don't have any problem with that. A city in Israel, a capital of Israel. That's where David set up. Jerusalem is pretty easy to set up. Babylon is also quite easy to set up. We know that it's on the Euphrates River. It's in Mesopotamia. It's not too far from Baghdad. Unfortunately, Babylon, as a city, stopped existing the better part of 3,000 years ago. It is a field of ruins today. And yet, we discover that if we take a little time with a concordance, this is made easy with a computer. Jerusalem is mentioned about 4,000 times, and the second place, and it's quite a far second, is Babylon, that is mentioned about 200 times. By contrast, the next most commonly mentioned city in the Bible is Jericho, mentioned about 19 times. And the city of Rome is only mentioned a couple of times. So if we're looking for two cities that represent the two poles of a biblical character or a biblical reality, Jerusalem and Babylon make a good contrast. Babylon is one of the oldest cities in the Bible. It was founded by a character named Nimrod and is probably the location of the Tower of Babel, where the earth's languages were confused. Very likely, Nimrod was the first tyrant of history. He was the first truly evil world ruler. He attempted to build an empire, through slaughter. He's called a mighty hunter, and he was a slaughterer. He killed who knows how many people in order to build his empire in Mesopotamia. Uh, and after that time, when the languages were confused, people went about. Babylon continued to be the source of world empire during most of the rest of the Old Testament period. Uh, it shifted for a bit to Assyria, was the capital Nineveh, which is just up the river from Babylon. Later on, it shifted to Persia, with the capital in Persepolis, which is just down the river a bit from Babylon. Eventually, the Persians took over in the entire Middle Eastern area. They controlled Babylon. When the Muslims took over that part of the world, they began with the Arabic speaking peoples, but began to have real success in their conquest once the Persians joined in. When the Persians became Muslim in about 680 AD, that vastly multiplied the power of the Muslim world. There was also revolution and war and general unrest as it changed from the Umayyad Empire that was Arabic to the Abbasid Empire or Caliphate, which was Persian. And that took over that whole area. My suggestion here is that Babylon stands for the totalitarian impulse that we see in several different movements in the world. Marxism, communism are built solidly on the authoritarian, militaristic totalitarianism of really of Nimrod. We see the same thing. Islam is built on this same totalitarian impulse. It's interesting to see the modern Marxists supporting the work of Hamas. The word Hamas in Hebrew and in Arabic means something like bloodthirstiness or barbarism, destruction. It's not a pretty word. And we see crowds of college students mostly, but also others equally insipid in their minds, who are supporting the barbarity of the Hamas, Hezbollah, and others who are supported by modern Iran, the Persians. Is it possible that Babylon is a symbol for all of the totalitarian impulse of the world, including Islam? I don't know. I've been trying to understand this for a while. We're going to get another couple of chapters about the fall of Babylon. I've got half a dozen books in my library about the identity of Babylon in the end time, and they all disagree. When we see anything like this, when we see a half a dozen different commentators come to half a dozen different conclusions, we can conclude that this is a difficult passage and we really don't know. That's pretty close to where we are here. So we're going to talk more about Babylon next time. Well, maybe it might be 2 weeks, but we will get to Babylon. We'll spend quite a bit more time with that because it's obviously important. Both Isaiah and Ezekiel speak at length about the fall of Babylon. Now, here we are in the book of Revelation talking about the fall of Babylon. And Babylon, whatever else it is responsible for making all the nations drink of the wine of the passion of her immorality. So there is a tremendous immorality that is at the core of whatever this Babylonian system is. And I think it's not the religious component of Islam, but the totalitarian, authoritarian impulse. This movement that legitimizes barbarity. And okay, that's that second angel. So we got one angel flying in the mid-heaven, another angel, a second one followed saying, fallen, fallen, Babylon the Great. Then we move on to verse 9, and we've got a third angel who has rather a long passage. This angel is announcing in a loud voice, verse 9, if anyone worships the beast and his image and receives a mark on his forehead or on his hand, he will also drink of the wine of the wrath of God. Okay, let's remind ourselves. In the previous passage, we saw the beast coming up out of the earth, sometimes called the false prophet. But more specifically, this is a religious, economic, political system that supports the movement of the Antichrist system. So there is a political military entity. We'll call that the first beast, the beast out of the sea. This is headed up by this character, this willful king, this man of sin that we call the Antichrist, for better or worse. That's the name we give him. The beast out of the earth has a religious bent to him. So we typically call this the false prophet. But the false prophet represents or is the head of a system that has a religious tone to it. And this religious system forces its followers to worship the first beast, the beast that comes out of the sea. So it's odd images, and yet we see this unholy relationship between the political military side of the totalitarian system and the religious side, the religious cultural side. And again, that fits the Marxist and communistic systems very well. It fits the Islamic system, the Sharia system of Islam, even better. And again, this is one of the reasons that my research has gone in that direction. So this third angel comes out with a loud voice. If anyone worships the beast in his image, okay, that first beast requires worship. There can be no second place. Worship is not something you can divide amongst a dozen different objects. It doesn't work that way. And Satan understands that. Once he's got you hooked, he wants you hook, line, and sinker. He wants all of you, uh, and God does too. True worship involves wholehearted submission. So the worship of the beast is going to require a wholehearted submission. Tellingly, the word Islam means submission. A Muslim is one who submits. It's an Arabic word. And the worship and submission are the same thing. The difference between biblical worship and the worship of the beast is that biblical worship is always voluntary. God calls us to worship, but we have to choose that that's what we want to do. Unbiblical worship is like Nebuchadnezzar ordering all the people to bow down and worship or submit to his statue. There's a huge difference because people may be bowing down on the outside, but still standing up on the inside. God calls us to worship in spirit and in truth, not just go through the ritual motions, the appearance of worship, but on the inside, genuinely bow down our hearts. This is actually a fairly difficult concept to teach, and it's fairly difficult to do, but it's very important. It's at the core of the concept. So anyone who worships the beast in his image and receives the mark on his forehead or hand, we should be reminded of that. That mark on the forehead or hand is what allows people to move around freely, to participate in the economy by buying and selling things. Now that's foundational. Basic economics is a willing buyer and a willing seller agreeing on a price and exchanging money for whatever. You want a bag of rice, pay the man in some pesos, and you walk away with your bag of rice. Um, the system that the Antichrist will impose will have lots of restrictions, but among other things, you won't be able to buy or sell anything unless you fall down and worship the beast. Unless you're wholeheartedly or at least outwardly on his side, you will simply die. You'll die of starvation. You won't be able to make a living. No one will be able to receive or give away money because it will all be digital. It will all be something that is handled in a giant computer of some kind. At who knows what it will be at the time that this actually happens. But this is a legitimately terrible thing. So if anyone worships the beast and receives the mark, God says it's not going to turn out well. You think this is a way to escape, but it's not. He will also drink the wine of the wrath of God, mixed in full strength in the cup of his anger. Okay. Uh, Most of us are not wine drinkers, and I have spent a bit of time in Italy amongst Italian churches, and so I've had a little introduction to wine. And large amounts of wine don't go well with me. In biblical times, people knew that. They knew that a big glass of wine would make you, that would give you a buzz, and most people don't care for that until you get used to it. And so they would mix it with water, and water mixed with the wine makes it drinkable by everybody, and it makes a jug of wine last a whole lot longer. It's a smart thing to do. So the idea of mixing wine is uh, a cultural thing that everybody in this culture would have understood. Uh, he says, "You will drink the wine of the wrath of God mixed at full strength in the cup of his anger, so it'll burn all the way down. He'll be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels, in the presence of the Lamb." Now, that sounds bad. Fire and brimstone are uh, terms that are usually associated with a volcano. Uh, the brimstone could be sulfur, uh, but the terminology usually is associated with judgment, and judgment of a particularly painful sort. Fire and brimstone in the presence of the angels and of the Lamb, and the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever. Now, that again doesn't sound fun at all. This is those who refuse to worship God, but instead worship the beast, are in for literally hell. The smoke goes up forever and ever. They have no rest day and night. Those who worship the beast and his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. Okay, so that's not a good thing. This is the threat of hell, literally, for those who choose to worship the beast by receiving this mark, so that they can buy or sell anything. So those who choose to be worshipers of God during this tribulation period uh, will have a terrible time. They'll be on their own. Of course, all kinds of bad things will be happening. The world, the wars and rumors of wars, celestial signs, bad stuff, nasty stuff happening, persecution everywhere. And the authorities will come to check that you've got your mark. Uh, it's not going to be good. There will be a lot of people killed outright because of their faith. There will be many who will die simply of starvation and illness. Uh, this will not be a good time for anybody. This will not be a good time for believers, simply because of the persecution of the time. And I heard, okay, here's the perseverance of the saints who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. Okay, verse 12. Here is the perseverance of the saints. You want to know what perseverance is? This is it. If you come to Christ during the tribulation period, you're going to be in for a time of perseverance. This is really going to be tough. And don't make any pretense about this. If the people that you know are not believers and they've heard the gospel and they say to themselves, well, when it happens, I'll just then I'll make my decision to trust Christ. It's going to be a really tough time to do that. There will be multitudes who do, but it's not going to be easy for any of them. Okay, verse 13. And I heard a voice from heaven saying, "Write, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on." Oh, yes, says the Spirit, so that they may rest from from their labors, for their deeds follow with them. Okay. Yeah. Blessed are the dead. Um, at that time, it's certainly going to feel that way for everybody who's in there. Then we come to 14 through 20. The picture is of the reapers, and one particular reaper And I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and sitting on the cloud was one like a son of man. Okay, usually that's a picture of Christ, having a golden crown on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. And another angel came out of the temple, crying out with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, "Put in your sickle and reap, for the hour to reap has come, because the harvest of the earth is ripe." Then he who sat on the cloud swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was reaped. And another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, and also had a sharp sickle. And another angel, the one who has power over fire, came out from the altar. And he called with a loud voice to him who had the sharp sickle, saying, "Put in your sharp sickle and gather the clusters from the vine of the earth, because her grapes are ripe." So the angel swung his sickle to the earth and gathered the clusters from the vine of the earth and threw them into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress up to the horses' bridles for a distance of 200 miles. So a fairly ugly image. Uh, here in the U.S., we have an old song. It's called the Battle Hymn of the Republic, that was written during the American Civil War in the middle of the 19th century. The American Civil War was among the first wars fought during the industrial period, and it was genuinely terrible. Uh, a very large number, many hundreds of thousands died during that war. It was, for a small nation, it was an absolutely catastrophic, terrible, terrible thing. Any civil war ever is always terrible. And the American Civil War, 160 years ago, was a really, really awful one. Anyone who had at that time studied what happened during the American Civil War would never have wanted to have another war. The First World War would never have happened if any of those leaders had studied what had happened in America, because modern industrialized warfare is just awful. The picture here of the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. Uh, Sends shivers up my spine. That's a scary song, and the picture comes from this passage. So the grapes, when crushed, let loose blood that flowed for 200 miles up to the depth of the horses' bridles. This is the picture of a terrible, terrible war. Okay, 15 gives us a sign in heaven, which is 7 more plagues yet to come. And this kind of closes out this section, this interlude. I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels who had 7 plagues, which are the last, because in them the wrath of God is finished. So we're going to see 7 more plagues, or 7 more acts of judgment, the final elements of the wrath of God. As a reminder, the entire book from chapter 5 to to the end of 18 or 19 is the wrath of God. This whole tribulation period is the wrath of God. And these 7 are the concluding acts of the wrath of God. Those who argue that the rapture happens halfway through because the wrath of God doesn't start until the seven bowl judgments just don't understand how these things are linked together. The whole tribulation period is an outpouring of the wrath of God. It simply climaxes with these concluding seven. And I saw something, this is verse 2, uh, like a sea of glass mixed with fire. Okay, the sea of glass, or the expanse of light or of fire that we sometimes see in the prophets. Isaiah has one of these. Ezekiel does this. We see this in Revelation. This expanse that surrounds the throne of God is a common image, and John tries to explain it the way everyone else does. He's looking at it, and it's beyond words, and he's doing the best he can. Something like a sea of glass. So it's not water, and it's not glass, neither is it fire. Some visible, flat, emanating sea of light of some sort. And those who had been victorious over the beast and his image and the number of his name, standing on the sea of glass, holding harps of God. Now, this, by the way, is the only place in the Bible where we see believers with harps. Most of the time, we don't see believers with harps. We usually don't see angels with harps. I don't recall any particularly. And so the idea that all of us are going to have to learn to play the harp is probably not true. But perhaps these folks are volunteers. I don't know. I like harp music, but I don't pretend to have the foggiest notion how you play a harp. I think you'd have to memorize what every string does, and that's beyond me. And they sang the Song of Moses. Okay, the Song of Moses is found in the latter part of the book of Deuteronomy, and it's a celebration of redemption. We sometimes sing the Song of Moses at our Passover celebration. I will sing unto the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and the rider he's thrown into the sea. It's repeated and it goes on. The modern Israeli um, pop music scene continues to sing this song. It's a very old one, Song of Moses. Some of the oldest poetry that we find anywhere in the Bible. Very, very good stuff. So they sang the Song of Moses, the bondservant of God, and the Song of the Lamb, saying, Great and marvelous are your works, O Lord God, the Almighty. Righteous and true are your ways, King of the nations. Who will not fear, O Lord, and glorify your name? For you alone are holy. For all the nations will come and worship before you, for your righteous acts have been revealed. So that's good stuff. Everything there is true. It'd be nice to have music for that, but we don't. We'd have to sing it probably in either Hebrew or Greek. But all of this is central to the Christian message and to the universal message of God. This fits the whole tenor of Scripture. Your works are marvelous. Righteous and true are your ways. You are the King. Who will not fear and glorify? For you alone are holy. All the nations will come and worship before you. for your righteous acts are uncovered, they are revealed. Good stuff. After these things, I looked, and the temple of the tabernacle of testimony in heaven was opened. Now, this is one of the few places in the Bible where we see a tabernacle in heaven. The notion that we have is that the tabernacle in heaven is the model from which the tabernacle on earth given to Moses was taken. And that works for me. The temple of the tabernacle. So the tabernacle is the basic worship structure, and it is called the temple of the tabernacle. Temple simply means the house where God is worshipped. It was never meant to be anything more than the tabernacle. Tabernacle was quite ornate, but God never asked for a temple on earth. His notion of worship involved this portable shrine, the tabernacle. And there's a tabernacle in heaven, and it was opened, and 7 angels who had the 7 plagues came out of the temple, clothed in linen, clean and bright, girded around their chests with golden sashes. So this is a very honorable crew. These particular 7 have probably been well trained for their work. And one of the 4 living creatures gave to the 7 angels 7 golden bowls. So this is not just clay jars or wooden jugs, golden bowls. There is a seriousness, there is a pomp and circumstance to the moment. 7 golden bowls full of the wrath of God who lives forever and ever, to be contrasted with the gods of the nations who come and go, who are created, who are built out of slabs of wood. But there is one God who is the creator, who lives forever, who is eternal, who is the Almighty, the Pantocrator in Greek, the all-powerful one. And there can only be the one. And these bowls are a reflection of God's wrath on a sinful universe. And the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power. And no one was able to enter the temple until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were finished. So this is the introduction to our next bit, which is the concluding 7 plagues of the period. And we're going to get into this next week. It includes all these bowls. There's an interlude in the middle what am I looking at? Of chapter 16 of the Battle of Armageddon. Now we're going to have to talk about the relationship of Armageddon to the other battles of the end time, and to see how that all works together. Armageddon is not merely a shorthand for any big nuclear war, and I hope that there aren't any. And I don't know for sure that the Battle of Armageddon will be a nuclear war. It may be fought primarily with conventional weapons by the men who fight it, But God will get the final battle, and I don't think he needs a nuclear bomb. I think his weapons are above all of that. So we'll see what that comes out next week, and we'll be back into that then. Let's see if I can make this. Okay, where is my cursor? As always, I don't know where my cursor is, and so I get to the point that I'm okay. Let's unmute. So, guys, thank you for showing up. Thank you for your patience. We continue to work our way through this book, and it's going to take a couple more weeks to finish all of this up, but we will, and then we'll see where we go from there. But the idea is that this time of wrath at the end is a really bad thing. Any of us who know anybody who is outside of Christ at this time in history really has an obligation to share the gospel. As the universal gospel of the glory of God, the need to worship him that comes at the end will be the absolutely last chance. And most people won't survive long enough to hear that. So let's share Christ with people that we care about now. That's the main message, I think, of this portion of the book of Revelation. We should not be happy to know that bad people will get theirs. That's a sad thing. We should be happy to know that there is a gospel for us to proclaim. There's a way out of this. There's hope. So let's leave it with that. Bye, everybody. God bless.
Thank you, Dr. John.
Yada.
Goodbye.
Appreciate
Bye.
you guys.
Thank you.
I always love this time of week. Bye.
Goodbye.
Ciao.
God
Ciao.